Okay. Hi, Trisha. Hi, Jessica. Hope you all are doing well.
Hi, good to see everyone.
Hiya, friends. Alberta, Jessica, Trisha. Oh, this is lovely.
Hello. Good to see you all. I like your background, Natalie.
Isn't that
you.
great? That is fantastic.
I was like, oh, I know what that is.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Annetta Stroud. I'm the Associate Director for Content and Curriculum with AACRAO. And again, we are just so excited to be here and to celebrate AAPI month this month. And so AACRAO has our AAPI Heritage Series, and today we're going to be having the discussion of the film Turning Red. And again, welcome everyone. And at this point, I'd love to turn it over to our wonderful moderators, Linda and Natalie.
Hello. I see a lot of familiar names and faces out there. I feel like I should just say it that I'm Linda Liu if we've not met, but I feel like I know everybody here, either by name or just by attending Caucus. I'm from the University of Pittsburgh, and thanks for joining us today. I'll hand it over to Natalie.
Thanks, Linda. I think I recognize almost everyone. Natalie Chin, my pronouns are she, her, hers. I am at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, work with our curriculum softwares, and just really excited to be here with my sister from another mother, Linda, to chat about Turning Red today.
I feel like we all know each other, but if we want to do a quick round of introductions, we can start it off. I'll popcorn it to Trisha, if you don't mind.
Hi, everyone. I was going to say good morning. It's just around noon where I'm at in California. I actually cannot see the attendees list, unfortunately. So I think only the hosts can. But anyway, Thank you for coming. This is one of our events for AAPI Heritage Month, and I'm really excited about this discussion. So thank you for hosting.
Thank you. I'll ask Alberta then to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. My name is Alberta Schmid, and I am the registrar at Metropolitan Community College in Omaha, Nebraska.
Nice to see you again, Alberta. How about Jessica, if you don't mind? Maybe not. No worries. How about Sue? Sue, do you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Sue Strakowski. I'm the Assistant Director for Credit Evaluation here at the University of Cincinnati. Nice to meet you all. I'm excited.
And of course, last but not certainly least, Chris Wong, the wonderful Chris Wong.
Thank you, Linda. I'm sorry, I'm coming from commencement, my other commencement, so rehearsal, so I'm kind of scatterbrained, but good to hear you all. I'm Chris Wong, Associate Vice Chancellor Registrar at Purdue Fort Wayne, although I'm finishing up my duties at LSTC. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
And Jessica, I saw you unmuted yourself for just a moment. If you are available and would like to do introduction.
Right. So
I just saw my unmute. Sorry, I'm in the shared office space, so you might hear some other noise. My name is Jessica. I work in enrollment operations at Miami University. I do a lot of international transcript evaluation. So nice to meet you, everyone.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you all for joining us today. Just a couple of quick housekeeping things. I wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page and that the discussions that we're going to have today they're just for fun. This is just a laid back environment. I want us to all be very, very comfortable. It's a safe zone, so you can say whatever you would like. There is no judgment. There's judge-free zone, so you may say whatever you would like to. And again, this is just Natalie and I saw this opportunity where this movie came out, and we wanted to sort of focus around it because this is groundbreaking for Disney, for Pixar, for for the AAPI community. It's a huge deal. And please feel free to share whatever it is that you would like to about the movie, or if the conversation organically sort of vibes off into a different path, that's okay too. This is just for fun. This is celebrating AAPI Heritage Month, and with a movie of this magnitude, we just felt like it couldn't be ignored. Hand it over to Natalie. If you want to say anything.
No, I think you covered the ground rules. I'll let you go ahead and go right on to the recap.
Okay, so I'm hoping that folks have seen this movie, but if you haven't, that's okay. There's again, this is not it's judge-free zone here. But if you are familiar with the movie, then you'll know that it's a story about a 13-year-old May, and her story into how she navigates her adolescence, and in doing so, she sort of straddles this world between trying to stay true to her roots, but also into the Western world. And the storyline sort of veers into what happens to her when she gets excited, and she's got this some will call it a family curse, some would call it a really cool amazing thing that happens. She turns into a red panda when she gets excited, whether she's sad, mad, happy, angry, all of the above. She transforms into a red panda. She has a choice between how she wants this how she wants her path to end. I feel like if I say the ending, is it a spoiler alert? Because I just assumed that we all watched it. If you haven't watched it, let me know. Yeah, because this is going to be spoiler alert. I don't know how to discussion without having the spoiler alerts for this movie. But yeah, so hopefully you have seen it. If not, go see it. It's a great movie. It's really cute. Anything you want to add, Natalie?
No, I think great summary.
So I'm gonna first start off with, what did you all think about the movie? I'm dying to know what others thought about this movie. Anybody, somebody, you could all unmute yourselves. You don't even have to raise your hand, Alberta.
Yeah.
This is conversational.
Super casual.
Turn it on.
I absolutely loved it. It was something that I could identify with, because you're kind of straddling, between one culture and another culture that is, distinctly, different, in some ways. And some of the things that I saw reminded me of things that my mom, would tell me, like the expectations. And, some of the things like, May's mom, she kind of blamed some of her friends. And I remember growing up, if I did something she didn't approve of, she'd go, it's because it's your American friends. So I mean, that was one example of something that resonated with me, and also about loyalty to your family. I mean, that was like drilled into me by my mom. She always said, don't bring shame into the family.
Yeah.
That was another thing that was, so my brother and I would always think it's like, oh gosh, we can't get mom mad, because she would go ballistic, just like her mom. And we also don't want to bring shame into the family. So it was kind of like guilt. But, on the other side, I mean, it was, I wouldn't want to have it any other way. I appreciative of what my mom brought into us, making sure that we retained, her side, of the culture. And so, yeah, there was a lot of stuff in there. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's like, that's what happened to me. It's like, oh my goodness, that's what my mom did.
I felt a lot of that as well. Anybody else? Did everybody love the movie?
Yeah,
do it,
I
Trisha.
really I really appreciated the movie because of the age of Mei, the changes, and how delicately the director handled some pretty heavy issues. And then that I could identify, not just as a woman, but an Asian woman, with a lot of the issues that were coming up. And it's so funny because the scene where the grandma, Ming's mom, entered, she entered the scene. It was like her daughters were looking at Mei Mei saying, you lost weight, you gained, no, she gained weight, and all this stuff that happens at family parties. And then they separated, and then it was the grandma. And I swear she had like these big sunglasses. She looked just like my mom. And so when the scene happened, I was like, whoa! I got a little scared. I was like, oh my goodness, how did they do that? And so I don't watch movies with that kind of feeling, of identification like that. And it was really nice. Yeah.
I think it was well done too. I tell you what, when the scene where the grandma did come in with all the aunts and she says, you put on weight, that scene was that was triggering. Like, whoo, like that took me to every single family holiday I had growing up. And I was like, this director, she really gets it. Like she's talking from her roots because she 100% understood. I'm gonna say that everybody, whatever your upbringing is, everybody has that aunt or uncle that always says that.
Yes.
Nah, pinch your belly fat. It ever happened to anybody? That's not pleasant.
And it's like every party. It's hard to talk about too. So I didn't want to assume that was everyone else's
Oh no, it is.
experience here. Yes, I agree, Linda. It was like every party, and it still happens.
Yeah.
Today. Yeah.
Yes, I still get my belly fat pinched. Like, no, put on a little weight. You don't have to go there.
Yeah. Nope. Have my brother's reception next week, and it's going to be a big old party. Like there'll be his, he and his wife's friends, but there's going to be a lot of aunties and uncles, and there's going to be a lot of like, we haven't seen each other for many years, so it's going to be all of that and more.
I'll tell you what, it's hard to navigate some of those. I like to think it's like typical Asian families, but also at the same time, I feel like even if you're not Asian, families do that, right? Do they do that? Thanksgiving? Are they all like,
I don't know if it's like, because for me, it's like right when you walk through the door.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's like that in other families.
Because think about it, you walk in the door, there's a pile of shoes by the door, right? Because we all take off our shoes. Yep, see, I'm telling you, I can't. I feel like heads are nodding. I just can't see. But like, yeah, it was real. It wasn't triggering because it's not like I had a unhappy childhood, but like I was like, ooh, she caught it. She caught everything. They had the jade jewelry on. I was like, man, this is legit. I felt like I felt like the director really like dug deep from her roots to like get it. Yeah, but also, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say there's like a lot of nuance I feel like that I picked up on of just the like, I think about the food scenes, I think about the aunties coming, I think about like again, like I feel like we've already touched on it, but the emotions that you see. But yes, Chris, I also take my shoes off at other people's houses, and an alarming amount of people are like, you don't need to. And I'm like, but I just can't, I can't help it. It's just like ingrained. Yeah, it's a thing.
It's the thing. Every time you go to an Asian family gathering, there's always a pile of shoes by the door. Absolutely.
And I'm curious, do a lot of you, like, it's drilled into me, we always bring something when we go to someone's house. Like you can't not, like we like recently went over to one of my aunt's houses and we had brought cookies and my mom was like, I don't know if that's enough because we're going to dinner and there's a lot of people.
That's the thing.
Not
enough. Was it enough?
Anyone
Whatever
else?
You brought, was it enough? Was it enough? Yes.
Forever.
Yes. Yes. And I'll do you one better. You ain't left an Asian party until you took the wrong shoes home with you. Anybody? It's ever happened to anybody? Come on. My elderly mother did it like twice. I know. She's so cute.
I don't think that's happened, but that's my experience. Anyone else?
No.
For sure. The wrong shoe, different pairs. Just slip on, someone else's flip flop.
Yes. See, all of these thoughts. Sometimes you're like, why is it just my family? But I have just found validation from you friends that this is the typical norm. And not only is it the typical norm, watching this movie makes me realize that everybody now has seen our typical norms, right? Everybody gets it now, right? I mean, the food and I feel like the parents are 100% my parents, where the mom is super type A, she ruled the roost, did it this way, and then dad's real quiet. At least with my parents, he was really quiet and same style. He would come to me on the sly when my mom wasn't looking. I don't know if that's just an all parent thing, but I was like, I think my mom was a little gentler than say Ming, but Ming loves her daughter in her own way. It's just, I'm gonna say that it would have been nice if May would have known ahead of time that playing the panda in the temple was not just a role, but it was like a real thing. Right? Wouldn't it have saved a lot of heartache? I mean, there would be no movie. Maybe the movie is, how do you sit your kid down and tell her she's really a panda in disguise? She found out haphazardly. Am I right? No. Yes. All right, everybody's a panda. How do you find out? How do your parents tell you? This isn't like, hey, remember your rabbit that we said we went to the farm? Not that same conversation. Is this thing recorded? This thing's recorded. I'm done for. Let's not show this video to anybody.
Yeah, Netta, if you just like happen to lose this recording afterwards, that's cool.
Yeah.
I guess I was gonna just jump in. Sorry, for those who know me, I'm kind of a late processor, so I'm going back to maybe not answering your direct question, but talking about having that aunt that kind of says about people's weight and stuff like that. And I don't know if it's different for gender, because I don't remember hearing that at all from other
everybody's
people.
mouth just dropped. Sue's mouth just dropped. Jessica was like, I know mine dropped.
But I know like my mom would say that about other people. So when you were talking about that comment, I'm like, yeah, my mom, she doesn't have a filter that much to be able to sell that type of stuff. And it's like, Mom, like you shouldn't say. So that was just something that struck me.
No, that's a whole different perspective I never even thought of, Chris.
And I don't know, because I know sometimes, especially in Asian cultures, they're not to have preferential treatment, whatever, but sometimes, males are dealt with differently than females in different ways, and what they're said, and different expectations as well. So I get it to a certain extent, but.
I will say this. So I host Thanksgiving at my house every year. There's usually like 30 people that come. There is a pile of shoes by the door. Promise. That's never going to change. I don't do that to my nieces and my nephews. I don't say things like that. But we do typical other cultural things, like all the things that we just talked about, that we've just experienced, the food, the pile of shoes, all that stuff. We do that. I find that I, as an aunt, as one of the aunties now, I don't do that to my kids. I don't know if it's just because we more woke. I don't know what it is. I don't do that though. I don't pinch anybody's belly fat. I don't say, "Ooh, you lost weight." I don't even make comments about weight in general. I'll just say, "Hey, Jessica, how are you?" I'll just say, you look good. I don't care if you don't look good. I'll say it anyways, because you know why we're talking about self-esteem.
I guess as you think of it, like I think I got more like I look too skinny. You know what I mean? Yeah. And the people are like, "Hey, you gotta eat. Always eat. Like there's always food, right? Like please eat. Come here, eat." And like I just ate. So, but anyway, just different experiences, right? So.
No, I'm a typical auntie. I will push you. Go ahead, Jessica.
Or they'll say, "Oh, you look like you've gained weight, but here's some food, eat more."
Yes, I was just gonna say that, Jessica.
I kind of feel like,
yeah.
should I leave this so you can all kind of have like a moment?
No.
Because I feel like I'm intruding.
Never.
This is so
No,
typical
you're
on,
not,
like, the
because you
AAPI caucus
know
stuff,
about
like,
the
I'm
pile of
only guy.
shoes. You're in the club. You've been initiated.
I just feel like it could be more of like a cathartic session.
I actually though I think that this is it's nice to know that it's like typical and normal, the things that they went through in the movie, the things that I think were typical, and you have just all confirmed it. Jessica, we were just talking about in the movie, just typical Asian household, always a pile of shoes by the front door, and your aunties and your uncles always commenting about your weight, whether it was good or bad, you know, how typical it was. I don't know if you've, not putting you on the spot, but I don't know how typical it was for you in your upbringing, but
well, I think all the shoes by the front door is also just a Midwest thing. I don't know, maybe people can correct me if I'm wrong, but
Oh, interesting.
feeling a lot of people's houses I would go to, that's how it was.
I grew up outside of Philadelphia, and I mean, whenever we go to other people's houses, yeah, it was a pile of shoes.
us too.
And then, you know,
Pittsburgh.
slippers, you have to have slippers, you know, even
Yes.
Slippers.
Yep.
how to get out of slippers.
Yep. Yeah. It's well, let's talk about this then. Chris is from outside of Philly. I'm from Pittsburgh. I know Natalie's out in Oregon. I know Trisha's in California. Could this movie have happened anywhere else other than Toronto? Because the movie's based in Toronto because that's what the director, who is the first female Asian director, like, give it up for sister. I cannot tell you how thrilled I am about this. This is groundbreaking. But could this have happened anywhere? Could she have done this in, say, the Chinatown in San Fran? Could it have been Boston? Or is it just because she had roots to Toronto that she wanted to do this?
I feel like it would have, I was just going to say, I feel like it would have been a lot more different if it were in Chicago's Chinatown, just because it's very insular there. And there's not much diversity in the area outside of Asian Americans. So her different friends from like different ethnic backgrounds wouldn't have, I mean, that's not really how it functions anymore because people go to different like schools and stuff, but like it's pretty monolithic, at least in Chicago.
I'm glad it was in Toronto because it helped because it's such a widespread popular movie, it helps to point out the diaspora of Asians and the culture and everything. I almost found it a relief that it didn't take place in San Francisco, you know, the Bay Area.
There's something kindler and gentler about Canada. I don't know what it is. They're just nicer people. I don't know. I think it works well though in Toronto. If you've ever been to Toronto, it's been years since I've been there. But I agree with Trisha that it sort of pulls in a broader audience. It's just not US. It's, you know, US is sweet and kind and gentle cousin. Everybody says A, and they have their Tim Hortons, and it's pretty legit.
I was fascinated by well, I was wondering throughout the movie how the director was going to handle some of these triggering issues, especially for Asian women, and the relationship with your mother, the generational differences, the really generational cultural differences, and it can go either way. And I thought that the director did a good job balancing the issue without making it the prominent issue, you know, an overbearing, stereotypical tiger mom, which, I mean, I identified all the way through. I think in general, there's a dilemma for Asian women to be perfect in the eyes of your parents and also in your work and school, and at the same time have room to be very imperfect. And so I was like, oh, where's the director going with this? You know, and there was no generational blaming. Towards the end, you could see that it was out of love and everything. So I think she did a really delicate job with that big issue.
Trisha, you actually bring up a really good point, because I've had a conversation about this, because I grew up in New York City and my friend group was that diverse, and it like had like, so we've had like, that didn't look abnormal to me, but working in Ohio, like one of my colleagues who's also like from an AAPI background was like, yeah, that was like not my experience at all, and like it was very different. But it's interesting that you bring up that point, because I really appreciated how the director I especially like the fact that they use middle school students, right? Because it's an awkward time for anybody in that age group, right? And like, I really like that transition between making this like, hey, like this is something that Asian like women face, but it's also very relatable just for anybody going through puberty, or like any like girl going through puberty at that age and trying to rebel and going to their favorite, like for me, it was like Backstreet Boys and NSYNC, right? Like, you know, like it's very relatable. And I really like that kind of blurring of lines, because then it kind of said, hey, like, even though these are like AAPI based issues, like, and there's a lot of like intergenerational trauma that happens and things like that, it also kind of cross over into like mental health awareness, and then like things like women health and things like that. And I really like that.
Yeah, totally.
Not AAPI related, but the backlash this movie has received for those women's issues. Oh.
Yeah, there was like that one guy who like wrote that critical review and said, this is not a good movie because it's not relatable. But then like also then in another article, he put like WALL-E as his like top of like 2. And I was like, yeah, it's because WALL-E is very relatable.
I have a friend who is not AAPI, which has nothing to do with anything, but is not AAPI. And I was sitting there talking kudos, because I am all for the fact that this movie is AAPI related. It does not involve Kung Fu. It is mainstream. It is about adolescence at its finest. First, I've said this before, first female Asian director for Disney Pixar. And her takeaway from all this was, I've heard there are adult things in this. My 6-year-old's not going to watch this ever. I thought, man, that's rough. I mean, I guess it's a choice that you make as a parent, but I'm just flabbergasted that, because I guess the content that she's referring to would be the just the changes in female bodies. And I was really surprised to hear her say that she wasn't gonna let her son watch it. The son also happens to be my godson. I don't know if he comes over to my house and he asks to watch it. Am I gonna let him? I'm not gonna say no. But probably the first and last time I babysit the kid. But
fun aunt, Linda. But I think you bring up a good point, right? I think that some people have an easier time accepting robots or toy, like they feel like they share more in common with toys or cars or like fantastical like myths, right? But they're not willing to make that reach into like their human counterparts, right? And I think that's where I get really impatient and frustrated sometimes, of like, you aren't watching the movie if like you think it's so specific to AAPI, because I feel like there are overarching themes of like friendship, of fraught, like being a teen and being really cringy and like that. And maybe there are some folks that went through their teen years without being cringy, and I don't believe you, by the way, but you know, if that's the case. But
I mean, I think, to be fair, I'm not positive that a 6-year-old of either gender would necessarily be able to like relate that much to this movie, just because it is for that slightly older age range. But I don't think that hiding it because it has like adult themes is correct either, because menstruation is not an adult theme. Like, it happens to girls, like child girls. So nowhere near being an adult theme.
I asked my husband, who's an old white man, what and he sat next to me and watched it with me. And I said, if we had a kid and our kid was sitting here, would you have issues watching this movie if we had, say, you know, a young child? And I just see what his comfort level was. And he said, I'd be okay with it. Not just about, like, it happens in the movie, but her emotions are emotions that have nothing to be tied in with, say, adolescent. It's not just specific to her getting her period. Adolescence is a rough, I don't know who said it. I think is it maybe Sue or Jessica who said it, that adolescence is a rough time to go through. I don't think anybody comes out unscathed, as we said. But I feel like that's too bad that it's people that one area is just overshadowing the whole movie, so to speak.
I guess we're encroaching upon what's taboo, right? Because like there are adult themes, you know, the Marvel movies, you know, everything all the kids are excited to watch, Cinderella, just other Disney movies, Beauty and the Beast. I mean, adults falling in love.
It's all kinds of, yeah.
And so it's pretty funny. But then when it comes to things that are taboo, right? And so, it's all related to how women's issues, that there's an effort to ignore certain things. And, you know, May and her mom were, you know, she brought out the pads and reality.
A box of pads.
That may have been shocking to some other people, which is shocking to know that, because that's actually reality for a young girl. So it's, you know, I don't know where else to go with this other than pointing out the huge discrepancy there. Like, obviously there are adult themes everywhere, my goodness.
Finding Nemo, first 5 minutes, a whole family dies. They get murdered. Anybody? Anybody? Right? Is that the whole premise of Finding Nemo? Is his mom dies in the first 5 minutes, and everybody gets annihilated, right? Nemo almost didn't make it. Am I right? That's an adult theme. That's the first 5 minutes. Boom, everybody.
I was also gonna say, Turning Red does actually a very good job of, like, I don't know, handling it with grace, where if you're too little and you don't understand what's going on, it's not like anything is being said explicitly. So if
Really
you're
good
like
point.
a 6-year-old, you might not even notice what's going on and just go the rest of your day and not ask. I think it's some parents that are afraid of their kid asking and then being forced to have a conversation about it, which is more on the parent. Like, that's a personal failing of the parent, not anything else.
I'm gonna put Chris on the spot. Chris, did you watch this with your daughter?
I did not. She beat me to it. She saw it on her own because I told her about this, that we were doing this, and so she hadn't seen it before. And then, like, in my mind, I was thinking it'd be a nice kind of family movie that we can, and so she had already seen it. I asked her, like, what do you think? She's like, yeah, it's all right. You know, wasn't like on her top list or anything like that. So I mean, and she's 13.
Okay.
And you know, so we didn't have a really chance because I just finished it last night, just in time, and so
it's fresh in your
I
mind.
haven't had a chance to kind of talk through different stuff. But I think it's people have different tolerances, I guess. You can always pick apart any movie for something small, but I think if you just pick on something small, you forget the big picture on what it is, because you can dissect anything. I wasn't uncomfortable, you know, with her seeing it. If she was 6 years old, would I want her to see it? I don't think I would mind, because I don't think there's anything that I was like really egregious that I feel like. And sometimes I think sometimes can be over their head anyway. And there would be a conversation at some point, because I mean, I look at movies as mostly entertainment, I mean, yeah, when there can be experiences and that type of stuff, but I guess when I try to look at it that way, you know, I guess it helps me in terms of how I receive it though too.
I'm still gonna let my godson watch it if he comes over. I don't know. Is that terrible? Does that make me a terrible godparent? Maybe. I'm a realist. I think your friends know that in the last half hour. I'm a realist. I shoot from the hip. Chris knows this. We've had many private conversations. I don't sugarcoat anything. This is not a donut.
Linda, speaking of like realists, can I give like a shout out to Abby Park's character in that film? Because like I just thought it would like the attention to detail was just so on point, because I'm Korean, and like, you know, like with like a lot of AAPI, like especially like specifically with East Asian and specifically with Korean, there are a lot of like standards, right? Like whether it's like how you look or how you act, or like there are a lot of these standards, like stereotypes associated with Asian women, and she just like throughout the movie just kept breaking them all. And I really appreciated that, because it was also kind of like commentary as to like how people were supposed to like kind of perceive like all Asian women, or like, you know, and she was just kind of like non-apologetic and very like blunt about like just throwing it in your face out there like that. So if anything, I was really curious. I was like, oh, like I wonder who her parents are, because like like that's just like so different from May. And it was just like very interesting that there were like two East Asian characters and just so different, but then they're friends, right? So like, you know, how do they interact, and how do they like then like develop at the same age? Like that just was so fascinating to me. Yeah.
You make a really good point. It would have been cool to see her parents at a certain point, just for that, like, you know, dichotomy there, to compare them against May's parents. That would have been really nice.
And like specifically to me, it was the whole like, there's a stereotype that like Asian women like never get angry, or like, right, and like, but ever like, come on, like let's be real, like I feel like a lot of Asian moms are like super angry, right? Like a lot of like women, like when we get mad, right? Like I'm like, I won't mind saying it, like I'm married to a white person, and I was like, hey, like I bet you didn't realize like how loud I would be like when you actually like married me, right? And it's just funny because like from the get-go, like she just like breaks that stereotype. Like she's very aggressive, like when she wants to be, but then she like flips back and forth. And I really like appreciated that, just like as somebody who is ethnically Korean, and like just seeing that and being like, yes, like there are people like that out there. And then for the director to like incorporate that kind of character was just like very helpful.
I can tell you that my parents are super traditional, super extremely 100% conservative. I am the antithesis of all of that. Yes, I've kept the roots. But I don't know, friends. This mouth gets me in trouble all the time. I am loud. I'm like super loud. I'm emotional. I'm like, my emotions are always on high, because that's where I always am. And it's like a complete opposite of my parents, where I'm just like, I don't know how I'm your kid. Like none of this makes sense. Like none of this is right. And my siblings, quiet, sort of unassuming. Not this, not me. I'm your Abby, except I'm not Korean. So if you want to know, like those were my parents. And I don't know. I was always waiting for my parents to tell me to tone it down. They never really did, which I appreciate a little bit. I also married white bread, and I have to say my parents were like super supportive about the whole thing. I had there's an age gap between myself and my husband, but they took it all in stride. They were really great about it, which I was waiting for them to be like, and they never did. They never gave me a hard time. So I feel like I broke the mold in that regard, but also I'm not sure what my parents were expecting from me, but pretty loud, and they were pretty awesome about it, I gotta say. I mean, with the pile of shoes and everything at the door, yes. Did my mother always have comments about my weight? You bet she did, but you know, what are you gonna
I feel
do?
like the older I get, the more I realize like how my parents are like, I think they're third and fourth gen, right? So I feel like our roots are a little more like my dad's side of the family is really interested in ancestry. He like actually went and visited like the town that his family immigrated from maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. But my mom's roots are like a little less, like they moved around a lot and everything. And I think the narrative that I told myself like growing up was like, oh, my mom is really strict. I mean, I think back to just the emotion, like I think my parents were very emotive within the household, right? But like outwardly facing, it was very different. And so that's the, whereas I feel like my partners is like pretty consistent regardless like public and private life. And so that's just a difference that we've had to navigate. So like get really angry right here, but then keep it together kind of in the public space. And am loud depending on what audience I'm with. And I think, some of you know that. But yeah, I think the older I get, the more I'm like, wow, mom, like my parents were actually pretty cool. Again, my parents also pretty conservative. I am the outlier of my siblings, like not necessarily loud, but just not as conservative. So
I would say even amongst my siblings, I'm the least conservative. I don't know if it's because I'm the youngest. I don't know. But also my siblings all live. So my siblings all live either, I have one brother and his wife and his 3 kids who live with my dad. My mom has since passed. So it's just my dad and my brother and his little family, whatever. And then the rest of my siblings are all either walking distance from each other or a quarter mile down the road from my dad. And they're like, it's rural. Like I was telling Annetta before, when we were setting up, I'm from a tiny little coal town right outside of Pittsburgh. And it's just super conservative there. And like, I don't know, I moved to Pittsburgh, which is only like 20 miles away, and I couldn't wait to break loose from that sort of small town feeling. But I mean, I go back often, and all of my I have 13 nieces and nephews. They all go to the same school district. They all go to the same karate school. They like get each other's kids off the school bus. And then there's good old Aunt Linda who lives 20 miles down the road. Not close enough to just drop in, but close enough that if you need a babysitter for the weekend, I am available. And we will be watching Turning Red. So I don't know if I broke the mold because I was the youngest or wanted out, or just because I don't know if I just saw things differently. My personality is just completely different from my siblings altogether. They all sort of just, and I'm all like,
Well, Linda, I'm the oldest, and I am definitely broke the mold. So my younger siblings are like,
oh, that's
but I'm curious but I'm curious about other people's like experiences if you're willing to share.
Anybody?
I'm youngest and considered, none of us are very rebellious. We're just normal. Youngest of 4, but considered probably the most rebellious, or what's the word? I will go ahead and argue a point because I will presume that I can argue the point, but in the culture that my parents are operating in, it's, you're the youngest, you have the least airspace. So there's that, it's always this constant, tension with that, because I don't ascribe to that in my regular life. So it's hard to, it's kind of like code switching. It's almost like, I don't know what to call it. It's a switching that happens, and sometimes I don't switch. And so they see it as disrespectful, even if I'm just stating an opinion and it's rational, that it's still seen as disrespectful. So there are times though when I know to switch, I'm like, okay, this is not even my space to have airspace. Yeah, but that's the young, I'm the youngest, so that's what that is.
I'm also the youngest. There's just two of us, my brother and I. And I've always been like, the quiet, the meek one. And I remember growing up, that was something that my mom's friends really embraced, because they would always say, oh, she's really good. She's really quiet. She doesn't make a scene. And then they would reward me. And my brother was like the opposite. He was like blabbermouth. And they're like, oh, he's a little bit too much. But it seemed like, that's what they expected from girls. And so, if I, did anything that they felt was embarrassing, they would say something about it, because my mom's friends, they didn't think it was out of character to be reprimanding another person's, child. I mean, because they saw it as collectively as you're trying to raise someone to be a good person. But yeah, I was the youngest and I was quiet, and that was something that I was, definitely rewarded for. I got a lot of stuff because I was quiet and because I didn't argue like my brother would. I just kind of fell in line.
How do you think that affected him as an adult?
I think caused a lot of jealousy, because he's like, why is she being rewarded? Why are they saying that type of stuff about her? What about me? So I think it caused animosity between my brother and me as we were growing up, because I was seen as the model child, whereas he was like this blabbermouth, this hyper person. It's like, be quiet. So I think it created a lot of animosity.
Oh, that's interesting.
Trisha, you actually bring up a good point that I kind of wanted to ask a follow-up question about. Because you mentioned kind of like code switching between like your regular life and like when you're with your family. So I've noticed this a lot, like being from like a Korean culture, very hierarchical, very age-oriented, right? And then when at work, like some of the people, actually most of the people who report to me are older than me. So like for me, that was extremely awkward, right? And I didn't know how to talk to them, because in Korean language, we have two different ways of talking to people, like based on formality, right? Like whether it's based on age. So like, did you experience anything like that? Like in your like workplace versus home? Not to put you on the spot. You don't have to like.
No. I went into my directorship kind of young. It's been a while, okay. But so all of everything you said, I had dilemmas with, and not only being at work and trying to communicate with people that are older than me, but also giving and expressing a lot of reverence for people that are older than me is not something people around me were used to either. And it's part of my leadership also to go ahead and just be very respectful, because that's what I knew to do. And, to other people that are older than me. So, but it's funny, here's the opposite. At home or around my family, when I started advancing in my higher ed career, my parents would say, I just can't believe this is happening. I cannot believe that you have to be in rooms with people, period, and you're taking like a leadership role, like you're managing or you're and are there people that are older than you, Trisha? Like, yes, mom, yes, dad. Some of them are older than me. How do you do that? How can you even talk to them? How can you tell them what to do? I'm like, well,
easy.
Yeah, easy. It's part of the job, but it's really mind-blowing for my parents. I didn't share this. I'm sorry. I'm Filipino American, and we do have words that we use to address an older brother or sister. So the hierarchy is ingrained in the language, which I'm sure is probably the same for some other Asian cultures.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, like even something as simple as like going, so I went straight from school into higher ed, right? And so like going from like calling all of my teachers like Mr. Mrs. or like then my professors like doctor, and then having to call people by their first names was just like weird. Like,
Weird, yeah.
so weird. Thanks.
Buddy? This, how are we gonna have, it's 10 minutes till, and now all of a sudden we have a lull? Come on, friends.
Well,
I
I
have
thought
a discussion question, unless Chris wanted to. keep
no.
going.
I thought Jessica Young, you were going to say something before about Linda's question about sharing, and then like 3 people jumped. So I was saying.
No, it's fine. I was going to say I'm the middle child of the family, and I see like my youngest sister being more rebellious. And I'm like kind of the middle ground of like being shy, more conservative, and being outspoken. I think I'm a lot more outspoken now, just because with like the climate now, if my mom said something, I would be like, wait, like let's take a step back and have a conversation with her about stuff. But I think I'm still a bit more in the conservative side, but trying to be more open and have conversations with my parents and stuff like that. So yeah.
Jessica Gonzalez, before you go and change and do your topic, I just want to share a little bit, I guess, just to jump in. Like I'm the oldest in my family, it's just my brother and I, and I identify as Chinese American. I was born in Taiwan and came to the States when I was 2. So just 2 quick things. One, when they had the temple, and I went back to, I mean, that's exactly how my dad's side is all there. But that's exactly kind of when I was, I think about her age, 12, 13. Like just the house that, you know, my grandparents lived in, my aunts and uncles were all there. I mean, that exact same thing was like, it was just bringing me back there, and they had a little place where they, you know, had just to honoring the ancestor part and that type of stuff. And I was young enough, I didn't really know what that was all about, or what that was. So, but anyway, just a quick share. And then so it's my brother and I think for me, I am actually, when I was growing up, I was really, really shy. I know people might be surprised that I am an introvert, but growing up, I was really, really shy. And so what you were sharing, Alberta, I think people would always say, oh, your kids are so well behaved, because I wouldn't talk to people. I wouldn't really talk to strangers, and be respectful to the elders and so forth. So I think what you shared a bit resonated, at least for my family or my experience too. And I think growing up, yeah, you are kind of straddling this dichotomy. Like growing up, I went to Chinese school on Saturdays. None of my friends had to go to Chinese school. None of them had to go to, had anything. They just kind of had a good time. And so it's kind of like being respectful for that, but also trying to find my voice, my kind of more American part, just being able to, I know you're not supposed to talk back to your parents, but growing up, I did a fair amount. So I probably wasn't like a model firstborn. And I think my brother, it's kind of like a flip, I guess. Like growing up, I mean, I love Chinese food and that sort of stuff, and just Asian food in general, but he didn't like it. And our experiences are a bit different now. Like I am not married to a Caucasian woman. He was married to a Chinese, person. And so it's kind of like our experience has kind of been different as we've gotten older. But I think just kind of what I can relate to what you're saying too. I mean, I don't say I was really young per se, but just it is a little bit of a switch, especially for trying to respect the elders piece. And when I became a registrar in 2006, I mean, I was about 30, but still it was awkward to kind of talk with people. Everybody else on my team was older than me, and just trying to navigate that and try to manage people who are older than you, but still kind of be respectful, I guess. I don't know where I was going with it. Just wanted to, I guess, jump in and share. And Jessica, you can certainly feel free to ask your question. Take us on a different.
I didn't mean to make you go fast or anything. I just thought since there was a lull, I would ask a discussion question. But I'm glad that you shared, and Jessica, you too. I wanted to ask. I read quite a bit of just discussion on this movie, and something that I saw that came up from Asian American men was that they weren't super happy with the portrayal of the dad in this movie. And I'm wondering what everyone here thinks about that.
I could go on for hours about this. Go, Chris.
No,
I'm really interested to hear your insight to it.
So it's different, I guess, because for me, I'm a softie, you know, like I'm, I mean, my daughter, she's my daddy's girl, you know, that type of stuff. So I could relate a lot to what the dad's role, and especially as it relates to, hey, you know, I liked the pictures. And that might be just because I'm getting soft in my old age, or my kids are growing up, and I kind of remember like, oh my gosh, they were just, you know, so little and so cute and just getting into all this stuff. So so I could relate with it. I didn't have a problem with it, but I think I don't know if I always follow the quote unquote stereotypical Asian male in a family household either, because I know there's pressure and expectations, but I want my son or daughter to be who they are, you know, who God created them to be. And as long as they, you know, like be themselves and love and respect other people and be who they are. I don't want them to be something just because like, I wouldn't expect them to be a registrar just because I'm a registrar, you know, that type of stuff. I don't want to put that type of generation pressure on them. So I mean, I'm probably just, yeah, I would not be in that type of view, I guess.
Jessica, I just wanted to put it out there that this is actually following like a huge trend that's happening like with like the burst of like K-pop, right? So like it was interesting because K-pop was also like in the show, right? Like through Taeyong and stuff. But it was interesting because I know that in the past, like historically, like Asian men have been like represented in media as being like pushovers or being weak or like whatever. And it's interesting because like now like we're seeing this tilt in the other direction, but also as radical and extreme where like men are being fetishized, right? So like it was just interesting to me that like the representation of the dad is also kind of like what my dad kind of, it just like reminded me of my dad too. But I could see why men would see like men could like feel as if they were feeling a little pigeonholed, right? Whether that was through the representation of how the Korean person was in the boy band or whether it was through the dad. Like it was just kind of interesting that that was how they were portrayed. And unlike someone like Abby Park, like it wasn't like a counter, like it wasn't a counter to how men are typically talked about in society.
Oh. I thought the dad was kind of, I think he was sort of stereotypical. Like he was more quiet. But also, this is true of I think all parents. You always need good cop, bad cop. And of course, because the mom was a tiger mom, the dad had to be sympathetic. He had to be your, he had to be her solace in it when she couldn't find common ground with her mom. I liked that the dad was more willing to share emotionally than the mom was. And I also appreciated the fact that when May decided that she wanted to keep her panda identity, he was sort of supportive of it. He gave her the okay to say, like it's okay to do that. And I love that this is the first Disney movie, maybe not the first, but it's prevalent in this movie where somebody has a superpower and she wants to keep it, and everybody else is like, no, you can't. She's not, the conflict is my parents want me to do this, but I want this. I thought it was kind of cool, and I thought it was fantastic that the dad was sort of behind her. I think you do need that aspect in this movie, or it just would have been, the tiger mom would have just been way too overwhelming. She needed a sympathetic parent person. Her friends of course are like, oh, this is amazing. Well, of course they're gonna say that it's amazing, even though she was a smelly panda, whatever. But I think they needed to have that counterpart to the mom, and the aunts and the grandma, because it was just overwhelming at times. And we've all been there at a family, we're just taking it round circle here. We have all been in that family setting where you're just where all of those tiger female roles are just, it's just too much sometimes. It's kind of nice that the dad was just sort of low key and opposite.
Oh, to both your points, maybe it would have been nice if May had had like a brother or something that could have been someone not a stereotype at all and just own unique character.
Does it
Like an
affect
uncle.
only siblings? Does it only affect females? What about brothers? There was no male cousins, or do they only get? Is there only a female lineage in this family? They never said probably wouldn't have worked for the storyline. There was no. What if you're a boy? Are you the black and white panda? I don't know. I'm just asking. You had another point, Jessica. Go ahead.
Oh no, I don't think I did. But no, that's a good question though. What if there had been a boy in the family?
We are almost out of time. We can keep going if you want, but I did want to share one thing with you, friends. Chris, you talked about a temple, and I was talking to Annetta and Natalie at the beginning of the movie. I prepared this only in case there was a lull in conversation. I love that I had 2 pages worth of notes in case things went to a lull. We never did. This group is amazing on so many levels. But I do want to share something with you. I'm going to share my screen with you for 1 second, and because we were talking about, is it this? Can y'all see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So this is from the movie. It's from inside the temple, but the picture on the left is actually from my dad's house. I went to my dad's house and I said, I need some pictures, because I knew that I was kind of curious as to how people would perceive the sort of the ancestral customs. Would people find it too confusing, that type of deal? But my point in taking the picture and sharing it out was that this movie resonated with me in so many ways. And I'm like, I completely understood every custom that they were talking about, but I didn't know if anybody else would. And so I went home, I said to my dad, I'm taking pictures. And he was like, take more pictures. And he was adorable. Actually, and my dad is a bit of a carpenter of sorts. He, this is my grandmother's shrine, and he actually built it, just on a weekend project type deal, painted it himself type, pretty cool, very awesome. But I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. Had the conversation changed, had it not progressed the way that it did, in just sort of like customs that maybe people weren't accustomed to, it hit home with me in many different ways. I love that this movie is what it is, which is groundbreaking. I'm gonna dare and say it's not my favorite Disney Pixar movie, but man, it's pretty amazing. Final thoughts?
I agree with you, Linda. My niece, she's 10 years old, and she saw it before I did, and she was really excited about it. She's 1/4 Korean, and she's always saying, I'm Korean, and there's 3 other Koreans. So she really identifies with her Korean side, but she saw it as a positive movie because I said, what did you think about it? Did you like it? She goes, I loved it. But I think it was like reaffirming the Asian part. And, because I haven't heard her say that, about everything. And then her mom was saying that, well, she's a little different. I mean, she's not, she doesn't look white. I mean, so she identifies with her Asian side. And so this was something that kind of like propped up that Asian side, something that she could feel, pride in. And so she really embraced this movie.
I agree. I totally bought into this movie. Not for the theme or not because, it's a fantastical theme of turning into a panda, but because I don't know, it resonated. AAPI is on the map with the first female Asian director. You have no idea. I'm totally into this. I've been screaming to everybody they should watch it just for that feature alone. But I hope that the director continues to make groundbreaking stories such as this. She stayed true to her roots, and that's why the movie is authentic. She saw a need to put this story out, and a story that hopefully would sort of encompass everybody, and maybe not even just female adolescent girls. But I hope she continues to do groundbreaking things like this. You know, and not everybody has to love it. I just said it wasn't my favorite, but I did love the themes. I did love what she did. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. I've been pushing this movie for the last couple of months. Anybody that would listen to me. Seriously, if my godson comes over, he's watching it. I don't know. Don't tell his mom that.
Send us updates.
She's not on this call. She'll never know. Anybody else? Anybody else want to share final thoughts? I know we are over time. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. A huge shout out to Jessica, Annetta, Natalie for helping me put this together.
I would just echo kind of what you said, Linda. I mean, definitely support groundbreaking things. And as someone who has a daughter, you know, want to highlight, you know, good, I won't say good, that's maybe not qualifying it, but just role models, or just that, hey, the world is your oyster, whatever that is, you know, don't, because I know sometimes in the Asian community, women can take a back seat, for lack of a better word. And I don't want that for my daughter. Our commencement speaker at my real job, Purdue Fort Wayne, she's the Secretary of State at Indiana. And her background is industrial engineering.
Ooh.
And you're kind of like, what? And she worked for GM and Ford, and her message to empowerment was just so, I mean, I went home and told my wife and my daughter, I'm like, this is what she said. Because, you know, when you see like Secretary of State, you kind of assume, right, different things maybe, or unconscious bias. And when she said, like, you know, if like for those women who are STEAM, if you're not invited to the table, you bring your chair to the table. And I was like, yeah, you need to do that. So I mean, yeah, kudos. I loved it just for that part. I agree. It wasn't my favorite movie, my Disney movie, but I could also say the same thing for Shang-Chi. It wasn't my favorite Marvel movie, but I was really glad that there was an Asian lead.
Yes.
And I thought they could have done more with the storyline. And I'm derailing. Sorry, I got focused on Turning Red and not making it Marvel, but Marvel, Disney, Star Wars are pretty interconnected. We can talk about that some other time, but just, yeah, happy to celebrate and glad to see representation in the screen.
Representation matters. It really does. I'm gonna see that movie's on my list to see, Chris. I'm gonna watch it soon.
Oh, you haven't seen it?
Not yet.
I was gonna suggest that actually for a watch party, I think, but we can do that next year.
There you go.
Rome wasn't built in a day.
Great. But I know we need to wrap up. But you know, Chris, to your point, I think that having an all-female, I feel like this movie was a little bit of like a love letter to Asian women, like multi-generational.
Oh,
and
that's such a great way of saying it.
I am like trying to think of not that like the husband or, you know, like the K-pop bands were taking a second like the backseat, but I feel like it really was a focus. And I feel like because of the violence against Asian, like AAPI community, it was just like very timely of having this movie come out. Anyways, that's, yeah, all I wanted to add.
Well, that might be the perfect note to end on. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you to our wonderful hosts, Linda, Natalie, and Jessica. Jessica, I really hope that your WASP problem has been mitigated.
Well, the exterminators need to call me. So if I don't, I'm not spending the weekend in my house. I will be going to my parents' house for the weekend.
Oh no.
But and thank you to everyone here, because this was such a rich and wonderful conversation. And Linda, I know that we were talking earlier, and so congratulations you got your numbers.
I did.
And again, thank you guys. We're always like, oh my gosh, what if nobody shows up? What are we gonna do? How are we gonna, and again, Linda with all of her notes that, and again, like that wasn't needed because again, it was such a really rich discussion. And it wouldn't be rich unless you all shared all of your histories with us and your personal stories. And again, thank you all so much.
Seriously, this is a great group. AAPI.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really.
for real. Have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for participating. Thanks for making this authentic.
Thank you,
That's the
Linda,
key.
Natalie,
Thank you.
Jessica.
Thank you so much.
Nice to meet you, Jessica Young.
Thank you.
Take
Nice
care,
to meet you
all.
all.
Bye.
See you.
Bye.
See you for the
Bye.
next one. Bye.